Fishing trips anywhere, anytime. FishingBooker.com.
Hey guys, this is Melissa Bachman. Are you ready to stop spooking deer before it's even time to hunt them? Then you need the new Flex S Dark cellular trail camera from SpyPoint. With a no-glow flash option, long-lasting solar power, and a ton of settings that can be changed anytime through the SpyPoint app, there are no more excuses for letting your deer get wise before the season even starts. So check it out for yourself and see why the SpyPoint Flex S Dark is the unstoppable and undetectable scouting tool you need for your next hunt.
Want to plan your next fishing trip without the hassle? FishingBooker.com is the best way to find and book a fishing charter anywhere in the world. Whether you're chasing trophy fish or just looking for a family day on the water, FishingBooker makes it simple, fast, and secure. With thousands of experienced guides, verified reviews, and 24/7 customer support, FishingBooker takes the guesswork out of planning. Visit FishingBooker.com and book your trip today. FishingBooker. Fishing trips made easy.
All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Bowhunter Chronicles podcast, brought to you by Huntworth. Huntworth gear for all types of weather, all types of terrain, all types of budgets. It's clothing that just works. Check them out at huntworthgear.com. So if you've been paying attention here in Michigan, Ted Nugent was just at a committee meeting, and it was all over the news. And, you know, as he does, he goes into these rants and all this stuff. Well, having Jordan Hoover and Josh Arbogast on the podcast recently to talk about the things that are happening in Michigan and trying to follow up with them on, you know, things that we as hunters can do to make a difference, what needs to happen, what is happening, how things are going. This podcast is just kind of following up on that, but trying to see what kind of impact, positive or negative, Josh thinks that that bringing Ted in, was it a good thing? Did it bring a positive light to hunters in Michigan, or was it just a dog and pony show? And we kind of go into that, as well as talking about things that are happening, what needs to happen in the future, and just kind of following up on our podcast before the doe with the bow was passed. So that's what today's podcast is about. Great conversation. I think some things are really happening. I think we're starting to move the needle as hunters with what Josh is doing specifically. I don't include myself in that, other than, you know, just trying to help get the word out there. I really do need to get to one of the meetings, see how it all goes down, and see, you know, what more I can do specifically for, you know, this resource that we all hold near and dear to our hearts. So that's what's going on this podcast. A couple of notes, new Spartan Forge update with some updated imagery and things like that, better property lines, more complete information as far as different states. Definitely Kansas is upgraded. We're paying attention to Kansas, and Kansas walk-in, different color, easier to identify. Just some great stuff. So if you haven't checked that out, or if you have it, make sure that you're updating to the newest software. Latitude, it has a big announcement coming up on the 17th, so follow along with their social medias to see what's going on there. And as always, our friends at Big Shot, you can save 10% there with code BCP, 15% at Latitude with code BHC. That BHC15 still works over at Painted Arrow to get some of their stuff. And definitely check out our friends at Kanadi, Zinger, as well as Genesis 3D. He's got a code for the Patreons. Yeah, this podcast, like I said, I think it's just a great discussion about kind of where we're going, the direction that we're going, and kind of where we think the celebrities and things like that kind of fall into the mix, and if it's necessary, or if and what changes have been made with the NRC, the DMI, those types of things. So I know you guys are going to enjoy this one. Absolutely. Thank you for listening. Enjoy the episode. All right, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Bowhunter Chronicles podcast. Once again, we got Mr. Josh Arbogast on here from, I believe it's the Whitetail Project is the new venture. To kind of, there was this big to-do with the DNR and NRC with good old Uncle Ted Nugent, and there's a lot of clips that are going around and got a lot of press, which, could be both bad and good. They say that there is no such thing as bad press. And if we're getting more people talking about the DNR, more people talking about the NRC, maybe it's raising some eyebrows to see like what is the NRC. And we've kind of already went through some of that, but maybe it's a good thing, maybe not. And that's kind of where we're going to start this off. So Josh, so last we were talking with you and Jordan about the doe with the bow, about getting more people to the meetings, about, kind of that consistent voice, that squeaky wheel that gets the grease. How are things going from your perspective on that side?
From that perspective, I think we're making a big impact. I really do. I think we're opening a lot of eyes and getting people to these meetings. I know there's been a few people that have, really stepped up and came out and showed face, and it's really accepted. It's really welcomed by a lot of the old timers that are at the meetings. I hate saying it like that, but that is primarily what's been at those meetings. So for us to be able to fill the gap there and kind of throw our hat in and help out where we can on some of these things, like we were talking, Jordan was pushing doe with the bow, and they succeeded. They got the vote, it passed. You can now hunt that Lake Superior watershed up there with a bow archery, and that's huge. That's a big win for the sportsman, and I feel like we had a lot to do with that and showing up and voicing our opinions, not just me, obviously, Jordan's been fighting that fight for 10 years, but, being able to support somebody like that, I think is huge, feels good. And, it wouldn't have happened, without the sportsman pushing for it.
So with that, on the heels of, I guess you would say that that's like a big win, right? Mm-hmm. What is next? Like, where does that energy move to now?
Well, obviously, no regulations are going to be set forth for 25, so that energy on my part is going to be just to stay informed and stay up on everything, and still trying to get people to the meetings and voice their opinion, and taking recommendations and have an open conversation from people, other hunters, you, friends of mine, and on what we want, what we think is best for the state and the resource, and taking that information to these meetings and continuing to hammer down and voice my opinion. What I would like to see is a push for, and we've talked about this in the past, but I would like to see a push for firmer buck regulations on the stance of increasing doe harvest. Doe harvests were up last year, 18%, which is huge. That's great. It's a good number. But it's not where it needs to be as a whole, because buck harvests were up as well. So, I think if we can stricten the buck harvest a little bit, maybe we can succeed with a little bit more doe harvest, and that's kind of what I'm going to push for. I would like to see 1 buck in 26. I would love to see that. I think it's a pill that our hunters are ready to swallow. So I think that now is the time and the energy to kind of make that change. I think it's positively accepted for change by the NRC and a lot of the people at the DNR, and that's the goal, man. I'm pushing for it.
So in that, poses a couple of questions. One, being, when is the best time, or when does this stuff need to get into motion so that it will be can be implemented in 26? And then to kind of go along with that, what does it take to even have a vote, or what is the outline?
So I'm going to say this. A lot of this is relationship and talking to the people that matter. You know, not just me going and, you know, pounding my fist on the table at the meeting. A lot of this is actually having those emails back and forth to some of the commissioners and, you know, actually speaking to them, not as their politicians, like talking to them as people and being the eyes of the sportsman. Um, but the time to put that in motion, I would say, like, is it's coming up as right now because the deer advisory teams are getting ready to come back and start meeting again. I believe next month, I believe in August is when they're going to reconvene and you know, start talking to some of those guys that, you know, are on the deer advisory teams. And I think that they're pushing for some pretty heavy change next year as well. So they have those relationships, they have those stakeholder group relationships as well as the NRC. Obviously, DNR is involved in that as well. Um, there's going to be a new deer biologist because Chad Stewart got a promotion. So there's some shakeup and change in the DNR as well. But I don't know if you know, last, what was it, 2 meetings ago, Commissioner Walters tried to throw in for 25 an APR, a statewide APR, and he wasn't able to get it on a vote because he didn't have it 30 days prior to the meeting. He didn't have that on the table. So I believe that that's their timeline, that they can kind of slip things in there 30 days prior, as long as it's 30 days. So, I mean, there is some time, but there is groups of people set aside for, you know, like I said, the deer advisory team. Like, they are looked at as kind of the representation for the sportsman, I guess.
So, you know, we've discussed this kind of like ad nauseum, I think, with the opinion side of it, with $1 APRs, earn a buck, you know, whatever you want to say.
Yep.
But one of the things, and I don't know, maybe you can expound on this if there's been any like movement, but there is all of the Prop G stuff, right? And so is that something that either these deer advisory teams, or is there somebody like compiling though? And I know you for a fact have looked at a lot of like the harvest data and read these reports and all this stuff, but is there a good compilation or even like a model to say, okay, this is what it looks like with $1, this is what it looks like, this is what the science looks like with $1, this is what the science looks like with APRs, this is what the science looks like for earn a buck, for herd health, and maybe something similar to what we have in Michigan, rather than I want my wall to look bigger, I want the opportunity to see these, or I want to kill whatever I want to kill.
Yeah, so I guess what I should really clarify is this, it's not about growing bigger bucks. Like, that's number one. Do I like to hunt big bucks? Absolutely. We all love to shoot big bucks, right? We all love to chase big deer. But that's not what it's about. What it's about is the health of the herd and getting that buck to doe ratio back in balance. And I think with there's a lot of members on the steer advisory team that work closely and, like I said, again, coming back to it, have built relationships with people out of state and have a lot of those numbers at their disposal. And obviously, you know, Chad and the DNR have done the same. You know, a lot of them kind of bounce from state to state anyway, so they have knowledge from other places and how things work. The issue that you have is putting numbers to a culture, I think. We all know we're a buck-centric culture in Michigan. And it's hard to put numbers to that on what people are willing to do because that's a social effect, right? So Prop G, that's the ultimate, I guess, hammer down by the NRC. That's what they're bound to, is making social science. I mean, not social science, that's a total wrong term. They are down to make science-based decisions, right, on the taking of game. So the difference there between the social and the actual numbers of it is going to vary a little bit. However, what you're trying to do is influence the harvest on a more balanced ratio through social effect. So it's kind of hard to explain that and make a graph on that. But when you know that Michigan hunters are, they want to shoot 1.3 deer a year. That's our number. So in the numbers game, if you're taking a $1 and making, you can't get 1.3 out of 1. So you're going to have to shoot a doe. So there's already more does being harvested there. So it's kind of a tough balance there on what kind of social experiment you're going to run, right? Like what are the numbers actually going to flip into? But I think everybody is fairly confident that if you do nothing, you're going to get nothing. You know, we're just perpetuating the cycle that we've been in for so long that it's time to start throwing some things to the wall, taking some chances. And I think with our current generation of upcoming hunters, we're kind of just, you know, ready to do that. Like, throw our hat in the game and see what happens.
And so you've mentioned a couple times, like, the deer advisory team, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm trying to be, like, as delicate as I can with this, but I'm not sure that there's anyone who was involved with that, to include the NRC, anyone who was on the outside, in the layman or anybody that thought that went well last year. So, I mean, would you say that that's a fair statement?
Yes, but I will say the deer advisory team and the DMI, the Deer Management Initiative, are different.
Okay,
So
I guess that's what I was trying to think about, was the DMI.
yeah,
Like, so
yes.
what is the difference then?
So essentially a lot of the same people on this team, okay? But your difference is going to come in where we have a different commission than we had previously. There's some of the same people, but there's some different people as well, and things are happening differently and at a different rate than they were previously. Deer advisory team, the Upper Peninsula chair is Jordan Hoover. Lower Peninsula is Mike Kevlar. But, and you know, as well with the DMI, like I said, it's a lot of the same people. So it's almost very similar in aspect. It's just kind of who they fall under that's a little bit different. And the NRC is not quite as intertwined in this one.
Okay, so that's better, because I think it kind of like lends to my question. So the DMI was a failure. I don't, was there one or maybe zero of all of the recommendations that were adopted, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they didn't do any of the recommendations that were put forth.
So, do you feel like this year there could be, like, some overcompensation? So we should do the big beautiful bill stuff, the Mike Lee type thing, and ask for the moon, and then hope that we only get a handful of the things approved. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I don't quite feel that way. I think that we should ask for exactly what the resource needs, because I don't want to take more than, and again, hey, I'm not on the DAT, all right? But I don't feel like they should start throwing so much to the wall. I think that they need to just throw out there what they believe to be the right thing. Um, but I think alone that the NRC is a little bit different now than it was. I mean, you got a biologist as the head of the NRC now, which is big. Becky Humphreys is now the head chair of the NRC. Commissioner Walters is great. I don't know if you've ever had a conversation with him, but he is he's not a politician. I don't get that from him. He's responded. I've emailed him. I've talked to him. He's very personable, and he wants to do the right thing. And I think he's got kind of the he's got the push there to make what was done wrong last year right. I think he's of the right sound mind to do the right thing.
Well, and I guess that's what I'm saying is that, like, last year nothing was accepted.
Yeah.
So this year
there's just no way that they can do what they did last year. Like, it's unexplainable what they did with the amount of work that those people put into that last year and the time that they put in to get nothing back. I don't know how they can do that again, possibly.
Right. And so, I mean, I guess I feel like it's like, at least in my mind, like, when you're like applying to colleges or something, like you have like these safety schools, like a school that you don't want to even go to, but you can get into. And so you're like, well, if I'm not going to get in anywhere, I at least want to go somewhere. So something like that, because I think that there's no way that they give you zero.
Yeah.
Do you just ask for the like three major things, like the only things you want? You say, I want one buck, I want baiting back, and I want, I don't even know what the third big hot topic would be. What do I got written down here? Yeah, that would be kind of it, and then unlimited doe tags or something. And so of those four things, you're going to get one of them. So you only ask for that, or do you say, okay, these are the things that we would like? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I actually had this conversation with a few guys the other night. Kind of the same premise. And yes, I agree that you just kind of throw some things out there in hopes that you get one of them in your previous experience. I just don't want to see them throw so much out there that they have, because what I seen last year of that DMI meeting when everything just got shot down, it was very like confusing, almost like they didn't understand what was going on. So I don't want to throw so much at these people to confuse them at the last minute too. And I'm not trying to disrespect them. Like, there's some smart people up there, but there was just a lot of like, like, is that what you want? Is that what you want? And I think that they need to just keep it vague, keep it simple, and just do what's best. Do what makes sense. Don't overcomplicate everything. You got to deal with the Michigan hunter. You got to deal with the NRC, who, they represent certain people on their own. I would love to see them throw multiple things at the wall in a package deal and just get it passed. Let's just change a bunch of things at once and see what happens for 3 years, right? I'm just not sure how they're going to approach it. That's what I would do, but I'm not sure how they're willing to approach it. Can't really speak for them, You never know what these people are going to do.
Sure. And so with that, like I said, with the doe with the bow passing, what are the hot button items other than one buck here when it comes to Michigan deer herd? Because we already have, the mandatory reporting. We've eliminated baiting, although the UP is different, and we have different things, but we've got the deal with the bow. So what are the things that are going to move the needle as far as herd health and fix the buck to doe ratio with the rest of the state? Because we have, as we talked about in the last podcast, grossly different habitats, deer numbers with the farmland and access as well.
Yeah. So, one of the conversations that I've had with some people are, maybe things are managed by zone, right? Maybe things are different. Maybe it's tough because here's the issues that you have. You have the buck to doe ratio that needs to be in check, right? And you don't have the same amount of does in zone 3 as you have in zone 2 or zone 1. They're three vastly different areas and they need to be managed that way. What we've noticed is we've given hunters every extra opportunity to harvest more deer through increased opportunity, which is what I believe the DNR thought was going to happen. Is you give people more opportunity, they're going to harvest more does, they're going to shoot more deer. That hasn't happened. It hasn't shown, not at the levels that they need. Buck harvests have continued to increase, right? So what needs to happen at this point is buck harvest restricted. And that's where you start to get into those discussions of, and again, I'm not privy to all the information that the DAT is, right? I talk to people, but I'm not on there and I don't know everything. But how do you restrict it, right? Just me and you talking, you restrict it. Maybe you move gun season, you decrease gun season, you move to one buck, you move to an APR possibly. But I mean, my views of APR and one buck have vastly changed over the past, since me and you did a podcast on it, a long time ago. I've, kind of switched up on that. They've given all this extra opportunity. For example, muzzleloader season, opening that up to any legal firearm, right? Harvests were up 63% during muzzleloader season. 63%. But as a whole, over the whole season, only 18% increase on antlerless harvest. So what that tells me is the more opportunity that you give people, they're just going to shoot more bucks. And that's where they kind of have to restrict that a little bit to change the social narrative of what's happening with the Michigan hunter. And, I think we're ready to do it. So I just think it's about restriction and not more opportunity at this point.
So this isn't me grilling you, and this is just strictly like a opinion or like hypothetical, right?
Yeah.
But let's say, like what you're talking about with an experiment with the going to say one buck for 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
How do you feel that will be received? But I almost am more curious about the legislature and the NRC than about the actual hunter, because this fear, it would seem, or I guess what's being pushed on us, and whether it's wrong or right, that's the way that I feel, is that hunter numbers are down. They're never going to be back at the peak, blah, blah, blah. You have two different camps that are arguing about it, saying, well, if there was good bucks here, I would hunt here, I would shoot more deer here. And then there are other people who are saying, like, everybody's just aging out, we're not getting the youth back into it. How are we going to recruit people if we don't have big bucks? There's a million different arguments, but I feel like, and maybe I'd said this before, that say the commissioner of the NRC or whoever appoints the NRC, so the governor or whatever, doesn't want that to be their legacy of, like, they're the ones that killed hunting in Michigan, or they're the ones that pissed off however many hunters we have left are all pissed off now. So nobody wants to do it. So how do you feel, like, in that room or whatever, like, what's the temperature on a change like that?
I think that the temperature on the change is a direct result of the people that show up. And I think that if we continue to show up as the hunter, we can set the tone, is exactly where my heart is. I've been to these meetings and I've watched what happens when the wrong people show up. we're still fighting this coyote issue, where they took coyote down to 9 months a year, put a 3 month rest period in, whatever it is. They're still trying to overturn that. And that is what happens when the wrong people, I shouldn't say the wrong people show up. It's what happens when there's an absence of the right people, when the sportsmen don't show up in numbers and force, and we can't equalize that argument, when social science wins. And, unfortunately, with that decision, the NRC, backtracked on Proposal G because there was no science-based argument to overturn that. But we have plenty of examples of other states that are successful through stricter buck regulations or stricter regulations overall. We're very lenient as a hunting state. We have a ton of opportunity. We have a ton of land. We're very lenient on regulations. So I just think that the people in place right now are going to listen to those that show up. And I think now is the time with the hunters where we're ready to accept change. I really do. We're harvesting something at a rate like 70% or 8 points or better in Michigan, which is a giant number. But the balanced age class is missing from that. The doe harvest ratio is missing from that, and those are like critical components of a healthy herd. And I guess I'm putting myself in the mind of somebody who sits on the Natural Resource Commission, where I want that whole package right there to say, okay, I put forth, because everything moves, we say experiment, but everything moves on a 3-year cycle with the DNR. That's the way that they like to give things time to progress before they retract or continue, right? So I guess I would love to be the person that made a change and reap the benefits from it rather than fear, okay, their term limits change with the governor anyway. It is what it is. You're not going to be remembered or forgotten no matter what you do, and nobody's going to come after Whitmer more than they already are, I guess, is my thought process behind that.
Yeah, I mean, I can see that. I just think it's like an easy thing to maybe hide behind. But while you were talking about that, like some of the things that I wrote down was like you said that there's this timeline and things kind of that they're still working on the coyote thing, and these timelines move really slowly. And then you said it's the people who show up to the meeting, and you need the right people there. Well, in the news, like I said in the opening, we just had a major, very boisterous and loud celebrity who's a proponent of bow hunting and the mystical flight of the arrow, Mr. Ted Nugent, speak for, the better part of an hour on things and that timeline. I know you watched the whole thing, and I watched the whole thing as well, not just the clips that were chosen. And all of the stuff was very old. Even the cases that they were bringing up to talk about, a lot of it was about the wild pigs and like what was going on with that. And they had a butcher that was in there. They had the pig farmers that were in there talking about it. And they had someone who owns like an outfitter who had these like hunts, and they had undercover DNR illegally come and do this stuff. But it was all what seemed like years ago, and it just painted the DNR as like these guys that are out to get you. And I know that's, I mean, I guess it's the way that you're kind of made to feel. I mean, I guess if you've ever encountered a DNR, and I've only had a couple of experiences with them, and it always seems like you're, at least for me, it's like, you're not doing anything wrong, but if there was some sort of like oversight or something, it's like, oh, you could get a ticket for something that you weren't aware of, and there's no, ignorance is no defense of the law, et cetera, et cetera. So you are always like on edge. So there's already a negative connotation to them. But
yeah, it's like getting pulled over, right?
Right.
Just still shaky, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And so when what were you talking about? And you said, like, the people that show up. So Ted showing up and showing out for real, is that good, bad? Like, how do you feel that impacted kind of like the things that you, Jordan, and the other people who are kind of, becoming the face of this younger generation or whatever are, how do you feel it impacted what you guys are trying to achieve?
Very divisively. Like, I think it really divided the amount of people that we're reaching. I think that there's, it kind of hurt, honestly, because I feel like I'm trying to do all these things and like bridge gaps and talk to people and show people like, hey, here's the numbers, here's what we need to do, let's do this, let's try something, come with me, let's show up, let's talk to these people, right? Let's just have a conversation from sportsmen to, Natural Resource Commission. Let's show up, let's talk to the DNR. The people that matter, the people that are making change, that can make the change. And then, he shows up and does this, and then everybody who's a Ted Nugent fan is immediately just rah, rah, rah. Like, he just threw kerosene on the fire, and just, there's like a flaming line now for me between a lot of the younger guys I talk to and a lot of the older guys, that are just anti-DNR. And, and I alluded to it a minute ago, we're very lenient. When I went out of state past couple years, I'm checking in, I'm parking in designated parking lots. Like, if these guys really knew what it was like in other places, maybe you wouldn't necessarily feel the same way that you feel about the Michigan DNR, because I've never really personally had those bad interactions with the DNR. Yeah, I've been on edge getting asked for my license and, hunting license, fishing license, all these different things, being stopped. But I've had some really great conversations with people from the DNR too, and I just don't see the overreach and tyrannical government that Ted's talking about. What they're talking about pigs, and I'm all for the pig thing. I don't want wild pigs here in Michigan. They cause $800 million of agricultural damage nationwide a year. Like, I don't want that. At one time there was, I think they estimated between 3 and 5,000 feral pigs in Michigan across 65 counties, or 63 of 85 counties maybe. We don't need those problems. So if it's a few pig farmers, and none of the agricultural pig farmers, like, they don't farm pigs, running wild in fields. It's set up differently. It's a lot safer operation. So for you to just have a game reserve and pigs running around for your own benefit, like, yeah, if it's for the better of the people and the farmers and the sportsmen for the woods, then I'm against it. So they issued that invasive species order, and all these guys are upset about it. It is what it is. They're doing their job.
Yeah, and I'm a realist. And it doesn't not affect me, I suppose, because my family has property in the UP, but all of this stuff was like the UP, and I don't know. I would say that my discussions with DNR officers, and my understanding is that even in the most heavily populated area, the DNR, the officers have a large area that they have to police, and so they have a lot to do. And then I would imagine as you get to the UP, where there's a population is sparse, that they have to cover more area, and so they probably have a much different job description or whatever. And then at the same time, you're looking at that. We're talking about timeline. The timeline on this stuff was a decade or more ago, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
And then they're talking, to use Ted's term, like jackbooted thugs. That's how that these officers were conducting themselves. Well, maybe, but you can take any industry, any police department. There's going to be an asshole, and maybe that's just the experience. But if you're as passionate as Ted, and you're going to come across as an asshole if someone comes up and tries to check you, and that's just the long and the short of it, at least in my opinion.
Yeah, for sure. And I've said over and over again, like, I appreciate Ted's passion, especially for bow hunting. All right, he's Uncle Ted, right? But I just don't think that this was necessary, and I think that it was actually really irresponsible on the representative's part, on our statesman's part. I don't think that it was a good thing to do. You had this whole oversight committee here, which was formed for during COVID with government shutdowns and mask mandates. They're talking like real government oversight. And we're opening this up to a forum of baiting and, salt lick tickets and bird feeder tickets. And it's just unnecessary. And, we're going to throw the hammer at the DNR, like you said, the whole department, right? And you're correct, and one of the COs I talked to in one of the counties I hunt, there's 2 COs for 3 counties. So if you catch that guy on a bad day, maybe that guy's stressed. He's dealing with all this. He's got to deal with Michigan hunters all day. Think about it. He's got to deal with me all day, all around. I just can't really paint that whole department in a bad picture. And then when you think about it, we're going to say that the DNR is tyrannical or jackbooted thugs, right? Well, which DNR employees are we talking about? Are we solely talking about COs that are writing baiting tickets, or are we going to loop in the seasonal employees that work the campgrounds too? The college kid that's cleaning the bathrooms, because it's because they're wearing a DNR shirt too. And I guess I just don't understand how we can do this to a whole department. It just seems really irresponsible on the representative's part to allow this to happen and take part in it, and act like this is a major thing, almost uninformed.
Yeah, and I mean, I will say that I don't want to. I guess I would encourage everybody who's listened this far and they haven't went and listened to that entire meeting to go back through, because when you talk about like who are they looping in, the one gentleman who's the commissioner, I believe, or representative, whichever, who was dealing with like the bird feeder baiting issue, there was multiple incidences where they said they came back and then they gave him a summons, there was a subpoena and this and that and the other thing. That's either someone is like out to get you, small town politics, or I don't want to say like a fabrication, but it sounds like something like out of a movie or something. And I have heard of small town politics and things like that, especially in like these UP towns with people of status. And then it just becomes like a dick swinging contest. Like, you can't do this to me. Like, yes, I can, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. But I don't think that that's representative of every CO that you're going to meet. It's not representative of the ones that I know personally. So.
For sure. Yeah. And honestly, like, that's the way I think about it too. If we're talking about a bird feeder, like, I have to imagine that there's more to this story. Yeah. There's gotta be more to this story, and it sounds like maybe somebody of status that thought, you're not giving me a ticket for a damn thing, and almost, we're talking police departments. The guy that rolls his window up, refuses to give his license, I'm not helping you do your job, and you're going to suffer for it every time. And it seems almost like a personal vendetta to allow this to go on. Not to get super political and like dive down there in my own opinions and everything, but it just seems personal. The whole thing looked like a circus. There was no order. It was show me what happened to you, show me what happened to you. Okay, give me this example. And they're just all going back years. Just didn't agree with any of it. If you do watch the whole hour and a half, it just seemed very disorganized and they're just kind of bringing people up one by one and then allowing Ted to stay there because he's Ted Nugent. Oh, you can stay there. Please, I know you'll have more to say. And then it's kind of like jokey because he's a celebrity. Just not really accomplishing anything.
Yeah, and so I guess that was one of the things I had brought up here is like it seemed more of like a dog and pony show. It was like a Ted Nugent gavel signing or whatever. Like everybody shows up with their minutes from the day to get signed by Ted Nugent, like just because he was going to be there. It didn't seem like it was addressing anything like specific, and especially from like a government oversight. Like there were no, I guess there was one thing that I mean, this is probably like the libertarian in me or whatever. Because I was going to say there was no recommendations. It was just like a bashing and a airing out of grievances.
Yeah.
But at the end, it was like almost in passing. It was like, oh, before we end this meeting, I just want to say that I would like them to stop calling it the DNR the largest landowner in Michigan, and that it's not a DNR launch. All of these things are public things. I never really looked at it from that perspective, so I did take that away from the whole listening thing. That like, if that is the way that they and again, we can get back to like the tin hat stuff. Like, who is the they? Like, who stands to benefit from the DNR using that moniker? But who by using that, they're not being representative of the people. It's very self-serving to say we the DNR. So that's something that I did take away from it.
Yeah. No, so I call it like I see it. That statement in itself was something that I was like petitioning against months ago. That came about when they were trying to do the solar arrays up in what was it, Gaylord, I believe. That statement was in a paper. Somebody from the DNR said that the DNR is the largest landowner, and again, somebody said it. Somebody should not have said it. And it doesn't represent the thoughts of the whole department. So, just being back to that, it's not representative of that whole department and my experiences with them. Now, was it said? Yes, it was quoted. But, I think he would probably walk that back now if he had the opportunity. Not to give anybody a break, but yeah, it shouldn't have been said. It was a bad look, and they used it against him.
Yeah, and so, like I said, I thought this would be like a good conversation to have because that's been in the news, and it's one of those. I guess I just don't think that it's like necessarily viral, but I think it's something that's not going to go away. Like those clips are going to be used forever.
It's not going away. I seen earlier David Preston. He's a representative, I think, 108th district in the UP, which is like south half all the way to the east side, Menominee, Mackinac. He made a video today and he's like walking a pig on a leash, and he's like, the DNR says I can't carry this pig, and it's like, come on, man. It was like a damn potbelly pig, but he's saying the phenotype of the ear structure and everything classifies it under the Invasive Species Act, and it's just, like you said, it's just a dog and pony show. It's politics that they're trying to bring into our deer woods. Like, honestly, like this is, for Ted to get up there and say something, whether or not I agree with him, I welcome all opinions about our deer woods. What I don't welcome is politics. So it was unnecessary, and I don't want to see him keep rolling with this, but this thing it just isn't dying. Now we're back to pigs aside from Ted Nugent. It's like, what's going on, man? What the hell are you guys doing?
Yeah, I again after watching it, like I've got like a million movie quotes in my head that I could just like I am. We're all dumber now from having watched this. You know, like
Yeah,
the
yeah, yeah. You know, that whole thing is like trying to explain it to somebody. Like I'm like worried about coming on a podcast and talking to it because I really can't understand even what happened there. You know, I heard it, you heard it, but how do you really put your finger on what exactly was going on? It's very difficult to speak to. It's, I don't know, man.
But again, I think it's something that's good, you know, here to address because that's the inherent question is like, how does that uh, abomination or that circus affect, you know, the things that you guys are trying to do for the whitetail hunter as a whole and the whitetail culture here in Michigan? Because realistically, for again, if I were to go back to my earlier question or statement or whatever and say who's going to want to change the regulations if, like you said, these are the people that are going to show up and this is what we're going to have to deal with on a much grander scale. You know, it would have been great, and I do have it written down here. And I want to talk about it. If they would have, like, again, come up with any solutions or said anything, you know, one of the things that at least did affect, you know, and Ted's very outspoken, and he says that he knows, and I'm not saying that he doesn't know, but he didn't give any facts or anything that was, I don't know, he didn't cite any sources on CWD. You know, he just said that it can't because of the structure of the brain and the structure of the human brain, like it can't be transferred from human to cervid. Okay. But nobody wants patient zero on their, you know, resume either. So
Right.
that's a problem.
Yeah.
But one of the things he did say, he just gave anecdotally, you know, we were having all this crop damage. Oh, they only gave me 3 permits. And you know, how is that enough? But there was no solutions. You know, he did mention Proposal G, and he did mention, you know, scientists and biologists are supposed to use sound science, but he also talked about songbirds and ribeye in the sky and all sorts of things. So
Yeah.
it was all over the place. But for the whitetail hunter, you know, I feel like that's the problem. Part of the problem is that they don't want, for like I said, like a layman, for someone who now that is representative. All of those clips are representative of the backlash if there's changes to this resource that we all hold so dear.
Yeah. So I'm gonna go back to what I'm saying because I'm gonna say this. Where was Ted Nugent when the NRC pretty much turned their back on all the hard work and interest that the DMI had last year? Where was Ted Nugent at the NRC meetings when they put a pause on coyote season? Where was Ted Nugent when, you know, Commissioner Walters proposed an APR a few minutes ago? Where is he speaking to these things for the actual Michigan hunter? He's not. We are. We're the ones that are showing up. We're the ones that are going. There's an open invitation no matter how you feel. I'm willing to share information all the time. You know, all those guys that go all the time, whether it be, you know, Elliot, Hubbard, Jordan, Hoover, you know, all these guys that are just out here sharing all this information. There's an open invitation, you know. We're making a point to go and speak on behalf of what needs to be done. Ted wasn't there speaking to all these things. Ted went straight to the government, and if he really cared, he'd show up at those NRC meetings and be a sportsman and not a celebrity. So I don't think that the NRC really cares what Ted Nugent has to say. And if anything, I think that they're just going to do more. Honestly, I think that it could have even hurt our cause more if under a different NRC. I think we're seeing a change here. Commissioner Walters, who I was talking about earlier, who I'm, pretty high on, he issued a statement going out against what Ted did, and Becky Humphreys was on that article as well, and they both just said, pretty much appalling on what happened, just kind of brushed it off. So I don't think it has a huge impact, but could it? Yes. It could have had an impact, but I guess if I'm sitting on the NRC, you can't worry about public view anymore. We're at a point where we can't worry about it.
So for you, and like personally, and the Whitetail Project,
Mm-hmm.
like what's the next step? Because it sounds like even with our conversation before, that we just need more people, we need more voices, we need more. So is there anything in your future for like creating like a survey or a forum or anything for like a lobby to kind of gather public opinion other than our own echo chamber?
Not necessarily. I haven't really thought that far into it, to be honest with you. How far I want to go with this. My whole goal is to get people involved, right? So it's an open forum. Like, you message me at any time, and I can spew facts or listen to yours, right? Um, my whole goal is to get people involved and get them there, no matter where they stand, even if they disagree with me. Like, I think that they need to be there. And there's, plenty of people there that don't agree with the things, our views don't align. And that's okay. And that's good. But, I haven't really thought that far ahead on what's next. It's just, I'm still at stage one where it's like, let's just get people involved. Let's get people to speak. Let's get comfortable with going to these things and having a presence, and then just kind of see where it goes from there.
Because to me, like talking with like Bob Jones and guys from the Michigan Bowhunters Association, those are our biggest advocates, at least for like what I see is like,
Yeah.
if a representative from the Michigan Bowhunters Association goes to the meeting and says, hey, this is I'm the president of the Michigan Bowhunters Association, Michigan Longbow Association. We have X amount of members. This is who I'm speaking for,
Mm-hmm.
then, but this is kind of like a bigger thing because again, both, I mean, I guess the Michigan Bowhunters Association, in my eyes, is, and in, really my experience with them has always been at the traditional bow hunting shows. The Michigan Longbow Association obviously is traditional. So
yeah, Bob's the trad guy.
Yeah, but I mean, I believe Jim Eckhout was involved with Michigan Bowhunters Association. He's a trad guy as well. Like, I don't know if it's an age thing or what it is, but obviously those guys are going to be more for, no rifles during muzzleloader season. They're going to be more for primitive weapons. They're going to be for a longer bow season. They're going to be for no crossbows. And so, for you as the Whitetail Project, instead of just saying like as a bow hunter, but as a hunter and a whitetail hunter, and we're trying to get to a better herd here for herd health. There isn't a Michigan Crossbow Hunters Association that I know about. There isn't the Michigan Gun Hunters. I mean, maybe there is, but I don't know. So that's what I'm saying is like, where do we get like the Paul Harvey rest of the story? Like, where do we get these other guys, these other groups involved outside of, our circles, which seem very huge because they're people that we would never have met or seen or whatever, and we're from all other parts of the state, but we're all into the same stuff,
Yeah. So it's tough, right? Like networking is very easy, but it's very hard at the same time, because you end up in that circle you're talking about, we all know each other. We're all in the same circle. I realized last meeting I'm sitting down with Bob and talking, and he worked with my mom for years, and like there's it's a small circle, but I think it's important that people understand, if they hear anything, that even though you're independent, you have a voice. You don't have to be a member of something to have an opinion. And it's recognized, after that, one of the first meetings I went to, Commissioner Walters came out in the hallway, shook my hand, he gave me his card, said, we need more guys like you guys. I was out there with Justin Root and Nate Roosevelt, and he talked to us, right, as independents, not members of Michigan Bowhunters, not members of the MUCC, just hunters coming and speaking and voicing concerns. Anybody can do that. So guys just need to show up. And it's hard, right? Like, it is hard. It's hard to get that day off. It's hard to come up in the middle of the month. How you reach them, I really don't know. I think the commitment half on a lot of people isn't there. Especially, like, nobody's committed like a bow hunter, right? Nobody is trying to get 20 yards in, spending their whole life in the woods. Like, nobody's as committed as a bow hunter. A lot of guys go out, sit their field edge on November 15th, and that's it for them. And that's all they care about. But their interests are to be heard as well, because they're paying hunters, right? They're buying a license. So they're just as invested as we are. Whether or not your closet, costs more than theirs does is irrelevant. It's totally irrelevant. Your time is worth nothing as far as that goes. It's all about the license and the dollar. So they're just as invested as we are. It's like, how do you, to answer your question, I don't really know. I don't know how you get these guys involved. But, maybe they listen to this or, catch one of the other outreaches that I'm trying to do and just understand that their voice is appreciated, even if it's of a different opinion than mine, and come out. And one thing that me and Bob have talked about, we're alike on a lot of things, but we're different on a lot of things too. But there's still a mutual respect there, and we can still hold a conversation as hunters, and nobody's all the same, and there's a mutual respect there. So those guys are listened to, man. They're independent and they're listened to as sportsmen. Just doesn't matter if they're a member of any organization, or they still need to come out, man, and voice their opinion.
Yeah, I just think, for the guys that can't get there, to have a representation, to have a voice, or I guess to have a proxy, I guess is a better way to put it, to have somebody that can speak for them or for them as a whole. And I think that's, maybe what Commissioner Walters was trying to convey to you when he says we need more guys like you to come, and guys that are passionate about it. But it's like, if you're so passionate about it that you're like the Unabomber and you're just there. I mean, you know what I mean? Like, you could be the wrong kind of passionate about it,
yeah,
and be not the voice of the people, but
there
you're just the loudest.
People there. Yeah.
But that's what I'm saying is, like, it is I agree with you. So I'm not saying that you're not right, but I just think like to be able to compile information and put that out there to say like, you know, I've polled 10,000 people from my Facebook group, from my mailing list, from like whatever we're doing here as the Whitetail Project. And these are the questions that we pose to them that were brought up, things that were discussed at these meetings. How do they feel about it? And 30% was this, 50% was this. And, you know, the other 20% were undecided or didn't have an opinion. And to be able to take your 3 or 5 minutes every month and give that information, I think would help to paint a great picture of the climate of, you know, that group of people as a whole.
Yeah. So my struggle with that is I'm not quite at that 10,000 member portion, but it's a good idea to bring other people's interest to what's going on. I will say, one thing that I probably should have touched on though, like for that guy that can't come, I do have all their contact information listed and they will respond. Like I said, I emailed, Commissioner Walters, he'll respond to you right back. If you have an interest and you want to just talk to him as an independent, do it. The thing is about joining one of these organizations, and this is probably something I, probably shouldn't get in the weeds with, but I just don't feel like I'm fully represented all the time, right? Like my interests aren't always what other people want. You might get in an organization where everybody wants a $2 with 2 spike tags, right? And I don't agree with that. I just think that's converse to where we're trying to go. So it's all about numbers with these organizations and stakeholder groups, and I just don't know that everybody always is going to be represented there. Somebody's always going to pay their dues and not be fully represented in their own thoughts. And that's why I think that there is something to being an independent. So I'm touchy with kind of trying to put somebody else's interest forward because that's their interest, and I have my own personal, what I believe will work, from the people that I talk to. And that's kind of why I just choose to put the information out there that I see that I think will work, and, try to see like, this is what's going on, and you guys can either agree with me or not agree with me. It just is what it is. I've been called a lot of names and I've been disagreed with a lot. I'm sure you've probably seen some of them on some of the pages, but it is what it is, man. You got to do what's good for the herd, man.
Yeah, I understand what you're talking about there, but safety in numbers or whatever, that's why we vote on things. That's why, and obviously we don't always get it right, and it's not always, it doesn't always work out in the way that the people who voted wanted it to. I would say that's seems quite apparent, especially over the last 10 years, we'll say. But those people that are on, your page that are, the best word, and I think probably the most used word on there, is uninformed. And I do believe that there are some people who, it is the culture of Michigan to say, well, you're not going to tell me what I can shoot. I've been doing this for 50 years or, whatever. And I think that's a pretty accurate timeline, is because I've been hunting now for over 30 years, and I'm and been hunting basically consistently every year for those years. And I would say the people that are of my age, but it could be the same echo chamber, right? Because we kind of collectively go to the same people with the same views, but I don't know a lot of very outspoken my age or younger that are saying I'm going to shoot whatever I want to. I think that we've been through enough of seeing like what our dads shot, or seeing those occasional good bucks or even consistent bucks. But if you're shooting consistently big bucks, those aren't the guys that are complaining and saying, I don't want a better herd.
Right.
We've grown up going from monster bucks to the Druries to dream season to the internet, and being able to see like what actual real working class guys are doing across the country, and then saying like, wait a minute, we have the same climate, we have the same agriculture, we have more public land, we have, just as many or more deer. Why aren't we seeing the big deer? Why aren't we doing this? And just saying like, hey, if what we're doing right now isn't working, why not try and change it? Well, why not try and change it? Because the neighbor's just going to shoot them. Well, what if we made a regulation that said the neighbor can't shoot them? Let's give it a whirl. I mean, I think that's most of the guys that are, my age, maybe a little bit older, all the way down to the newer hunters. And it's just the ones that are aging out, the ones that, that hunting population that we're losing are the ones that are the maybe most uninformed and most vocal.
Yeah. It's eye-opening, the amount of people that don't understand Proposal G and how it works and how regulations, the amount of people that, going back to it, just think that the DNR is the enemy, right? That is the most uninformed statement that you can make, is saying that, the DNR doesn't know what the hell they're doing. DNR is the only one with facts and data. Like, they're the only ones. It's their prime job. We're the roadblock and the barrier there. And what age class it is, I think we all know. I think you just got at it. But I'm also like, I always respect my elders type guy and their opinion, right? They've seen it, they've been through it. So it's like, at some point you kind of have to listen to them, when they start saying things. Well, do you remember when the DNR did this? And it's like, no, I didn't live through that, right? Tell me about it. But at the same time, we're talking about a hunting population that is, well, we're up for the second year in a row, but we've had an annual decline of, 1.3%, average annual decline. We're down like 31% since 1995. We're not introducing hunters, right? We're not, and we still have over 600,000 hunters last year. Like we're fine as far as hunters go. We're fine. We really don't need 30% more hunters, like in my opinion. But what's happening is you're getting these younger guys in here, and you need something to keep them here, to keep them going. And I think if you keep putting a product on the table like Michigan has, because you just kind of alluded to it with, we have the internet. We have all this accessibility to see what other states are doing, to see what other people are shooting. And I'm not advocating for it and saying that it's a great thing, because I don't I think it can be a hindrance, and a lot of times it's can be the thief of your joy, right? To seeing somebody else all the time busting a booner, and you're like, well, I have to shoot a 160. If I don't shoot a Pope this year, I'm not doing anything. Like, I don't think that that's good at all. I really don't. I think that there's a progression as a hunter, and I think it's a natural progression. And I think you should be happy with what you harvest every year. But as a whole, I think it's important that we try to cater to the hunter experience a little bit more than what we're doing. And if we can tackle that while we fix the health of the herd, then it's a win-win. And the only way to kind of do that is to get that buck to doe ratio in check and balance everything. And I think that that's just step one, man. I really do. I really believe in it. It's hard. I was listening to Ted Nugent. He did a podcast with the MUCC the other day, and he was saying that they were talking about youth season, and he was saying that with kids, when he was a kid, he said he didn't shoot a buck his first couple years, and it was his drive to shoot a buck that kept him coming back. And that is not every child. That may be you and me, that may be Ted, but that is not every kid. I think a lot of kids need that first harvest to keep them coming back. They need to feel that excitement to keep them coming back and engaged. Every kid isn't the same. So it's just, at some point, you have to put a great product on the table, right? For people to keep spending their money here, to keep investing. And if we can, like I just said, if we can do that, tackle that at the same time while the herd is just consistently getting healthier, antlers are the only thing they are is a byproduct of a healthy herd and nothing more. We're not trying to have a trophy class state. You're never going to be Iowa. You're never going to be Kansas. It's totally different habitat and climate, and it's just totally different. But we can be the best Michigan that we can be. And that's where we need to start.
Man, I think that was very articulate. I think that's a great place to end. I don't think we can close on a better diatribe. I think that was great. I mean, honestly, that's all we can hope for, is to encourage the Michigan hunter, the next generation of hunters, and put essentially a better product on the table at the end of the day for you to wrap that tag around, whether it's a healthier doe, whether it's a bigger age class animal, but overall to put a better herd together and do at least make an effort for conservation. And like I said, I think you put that very, very eloquently. So
all right.
yeah, no, absolutely. What, so for people who want to, where is your most engagement? Is it Instagram or Facebook?
It's probably 50-50. Honestly, I still get a lot of people that, contact me on my personal page. So Michigan Whitetail Project on Instagram and Facebook. I do kind of vet people on Facebook with questions so we don't get hammered with a lot of negativity and things like that. But just answer the questions if you join the page, and we'll get you in there. But yeah, I'm open to engagement for sure.
Look them up, get on there, and answer some of the questions, put your opinions out there, and help Josh. And like I said, I got to get to one of these meetings. It's funny. I was thinking about, while you were talking about that in the youth and all of that stuff, and even earlier, that I just need to get down there to a meeting, but it's I need to bring my daughter down there, just, because you had said it matters who shows up and all of that, but to have, a 9-year-old blonde-haired girl show up and be engaged about a deer hunting situation, I think would open some eyes there.
Yeah, for sure. I think it made a huge impact. Jordan brought one of his kids to one of the meetings, and it's huge, and it's important. You start them young. You never know what seed you're planting, right? She might be a future politician, future
Yeah.
NRC board member.
Yeah, all my friends say she's either going to be a mob boss or the next president. It's just just which way she wants to put her talents. So, but well, yeah, man, I appreciate it. And when is the next meeting?
What is it? I believe it's August 14th. I'll put that information out on the Whitetail Project page as well. It'll be the second Tuesday. Yeah, the 14th.
Okay.
August
awesome,
14th.
Man. Well, I appreciate it. And
that meeting, just to clarify real quick, I believe that meeting's in Gaylord, though.
Okay. All right.
Coffee with commissioners beforehand, so it's not in Lansing.
Okay. Well, I appreciate it. And again, thanks for all you do. And we'll definitely do this again next time Uncle Ted comes out.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Want to plan your next fishing trip without the hassle? FishingBooker.com is the best way to find and book a fishing charter anywhere in the world. Whether you're chasing trophy fish or just looking for a family day on the water, Fishing Booker makes it simple, fast, and secure. With thousands of experienced guides, verified reviews, and 24/7 customer support, Fishing Booker takes the guesswork out of planning. Visit FishingBooker.com and book your trip today. Fishing Booker. Fishing trips made easy.
Hit the road for fun and heartwarming fishing adventures with the Real American Road Trip.
I just want to hook up one time. I just need to hook up one time.
Catch the Waypoint Original Series every Tuesday at 9:30 p.m. Eastern on the Waypoint TV channel. Waypoint TV, your destination for outdoor entertainment.
I did get a bite. I have gotten a bite. I did feel it.